This was hard. This was a hard one. This was a hard one. This was a coaching spanking on both sides of the ball. You had four teams defending their home turf this weekend. Houston said to Cleveland, not in our house.
Not in our house.
Not on our watch.
No.
Not in our city. Kansas City stood up and said, I know what we went through all year, but not in our house, not in our city, not on our watch. Detroit, who a lot of people had the Rams, including me, going in and beating Detroit. They said, not in our house, not on our watch, not in our city.
Preach.
And then Dallas, the most recognizable.
What's up, everybody? This is the Sports League Podcast, back for another week. I'm your host, Alex Leak. We got Amanda on the show, as always. And Amanda, wild card recap, and it lived up to its name. The first round of the playoffs was wild, wasn't it?
Oh, it was insane. I want to know how many people who made their brackets before the postseason started, what percentage of people still have their bracket going? Because it's got to be single digits, 2-3%. Some of these games were absolutely blindsiding, and I loved it.
Yeah, it had March Madness vibes to it. I mean, we had never seen a 7 seed win a playoff game, and we didn't expect either one to pull it off, but we got to see that. And it started off the first playoff game on Saturday with a lot of people assumed that the Browns, the veteran quarterback, the veteran team, and the best defense in football would slow down the rookie and, the rookie head coach, the rookie quarterback. But that wasn't the case, as the Texans get this win easily and throw up 45 points on them, 45-14. How about that one?
I mean, it's interesting, too, because I was rooting for both teams. I wanted Flacco to go out with a win. And then also C.J. Stroud has an amazing record-breaking season. So I was really pulling for him, too. So I would have been happy with either team winning. But I was not expecting a 31-point blowout here. I mean, honestly, this weekend, those were pretty terrible postseason games. When you go to the postseason, and you want to see close back and forth kind of games, we basically had 5 blowouts. And then, the Lions-Rams was a 1-point game. So it wasn't a full weekend of blowouts. But I mean, the average margin of victory this week was 17.3 points. These games were decided in the first half for the most part.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. And I mean, this game was interesting early on. I mean, the Browns were up 14-10. It was going back and forth, and even when the Texans take a 10-point lead in the halftime, you feel like we're gonna see the Browns get back into it. And it wasn't until Joe Flacco throws back-to-back pick sixes that the game really got out of hand. But to me, I mean, and that's something that I mentioned, in our preview, is the turnovers and whether the Browns force C.J. Stroud into some turnovers or whether the Texans force Joe Flacco, and that would have been one issue for Flacco in the regular season was the interceptions, right?
Yeah, but throughout the regular season, when he stepped in, the defense carried them despite the interceptions.
Yeah.
The Cleveland defense completely no-showed in this game. And I mean, honestly, I had Flacco throwing 3 touchdowns. I just thought they would all be to his team and not, 1 to his team and 2 to the Texans. But I mean, of the 5 active quarterbacks in the league who have, started and won a Super Bowl, Joe Flacco, I mean, he's going on the last one here because, Matt Stafford was left in there. But I mean, we're running out of quarterback. So it's turning into a really, really young postseason now, and I am loving it.
Yeah, me too. And just the unpredictability of it. And C.J. Stroud is right there, playing the best football of anybody at this moment. He goes for 274 yards, 3 touchdowns, again, no turnovers, which is key, especially for a rookie quarterback against the number 1 defense in football. Everything that I've been taught to believe since the 90s is that rookie quarterback versus number 1 defense in the playoffs, you go with the defense. But Cleveland didn't play up to it. I mean, they played bad defense, and Even with the pick sixes, you allow 31 points. If we had said that in our preview, that the Browns are going to give up 31 points, I think we both would have taken the Texans here, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this is one of those games where the Browns picked the wrong day to have a bad day. I mean,
Yeah.
we knew CJ Stroud was good, but we kind of assumed experience would win out. And while we've been rooting for CJ Stroud and the young Texans most of the season, generally it is experience who wins out here. I mean, it was a beautiful game, but we've talked all season about how CJ Stroud doesn't play like a rookie. He doesn't seem to get rattled. He doesn't let the pressure get to him. We thought maybe, the postseason stage would kind of switch that story. But I mean, between him and the play calls by Bobby Slowick, I mean, it was a beautiful game. I mean, Houston 356 yards before taking like their foot off the pedal and kind of slowing their offense down. That's insane.
Yeah, and that's kind of the theme of the wild card round is defenses that we thought we could trust, allowing like blown coverages, allowing wide ass open receivers, and the Cleveland defense does not record a sack or force a turnover in the game and allow 31 points. That's a recipe for a loss. And credit to CJ Stroud and D'Amico Ryan's a huge win, and they're going to advance, and that sets up a game at the Ravens on Saturday. And honestly, that's going to be a pretty good game, I think. And credit to the Texans defense, who's playing pretty well too.
Yeah, they really stood up in this game, and I wasn't expecting that much from the Texans defense, but clearly they were the better defense in this game. I mean, they did allow 368 passing yards, but you know, when they met up in week 16 and they let them, pass that much on them, Amari Cooper was such a factor in that game. So
Mm-hmm.
we kind of thought this would be, a repeat of that. But I mean, shout out to the Texans for learning from their mistakes in that matchup and, correcting everything. I didn't really have anything negative to say about that defense. I mean, linebacker Christian Harris was all over the place. He had one of the pick sixes, he had a sack. The secondary was everywhere they needed to be, completely shutting down Amari Cooper and all of the rest of the wide receivers. I mean, they definitely corrected their regular season issues. And it is very rare to see such a turnaround from teams that just met up in the past month to that postseason matchup. Usually it's kind of a repeat or, a close game with a slight switch, but this was a completely different Texans team.
Yeah, and I believe they were without Jonathan Grenard and Will Anderson Jr. in that first game. So getting them both back healthy was a huge boost. And I think D'Amico Ryans rallied the team around that and said, look, we
Mhm.
didn't have CJ Stroud, we didn't have Will Anderson. Now we're healthy, and let's go out there and show that that was a fluke, right? That wasn't who we are. And let's go make a statement at home, probably played a factor as well. And once those interceptions started to happen, it just snowballed and it turned into an easy win. So credit to the Texans, a great statement victory, and they'll play the Ravens on Saturday. And for the Browns, a pretty good season despite all the injuries. You lose Nick Chubb, you lose Deshaun Watson, but they're gonna need. I think there was a lot of talk about, hey, should they make Joe Flacco the starter next year? Even with Deshaun Watson and that contract, I think that we need to pump the brakes on that. If the Browns are going to go on a deep playoff run and contend for a Super Bowl, they're going to need a healthy Deshaun Watson, right?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, this season would have looked very different, I think, if he had stayed healthy this season. I mean, looking
Yeah,
at that division and where it ended up and like how much of a turnaround the Texans had. I mean, in the way too early draft predictions for 2024, weeks 1 and 2 of the season, I mean, the Texans were projected in the top 4 picks going
yeah,
into, this year. And I mean, what a turnaround for them. I mean, it's insane how much that they just handled that defense. And honestly, facing a defense like that with a bunch of rookies on your team, I'm sure most quarterbacks as rookies in that situation would have been very nervous. But I mean, the Texans just became the fourth team in NFL history to win a playoff game with a rookie head coach and a rookie starting quarterback.
yeah. And
And I mean, I am impressed as hell.
yeah, and Stroud showed no signs of being nervous.
Mm-mm.
Going back to that game against the Colts, in Week 18 and going into this one, no nervousness. Even that when he went on the Pat McAfee show, extreme confidence in himself, and not cockiness, but just confidence. Like, you know, who cares what the media says? Who cares about the noise? I'm gonna go out there and play my game. And no one gave him a shot against Georgia when he was at Ohio State either in the playoffs. So he is constantly proving people wrong, and he's got a lot of talent, and I love to see it. Um, and then the other story here is Joe Flacco. What happens with him? Likely going to be a free agent, and does he get another opportunity? I think that he'll get signed somewhere as a backup to compete for a start. And if an injury happens or if he wins out in training camp or preseason, Flacco, I think, could get another opportunity next year.
I mean, look at some of the starting quarterbacks who currently have jobs. Like I can think of three, maybe at least two, who I think I would prefer
Hmm.
Flacco over. I mean, look at, the Desmond Ritter situation. Sam Howell.
Yep.
If I had to, gun to my head, pick between them and Flacco, I'm picking Flacco. But I mean, it was a really bummer of a way for Flacco to go out. I mean, I was really excited for him. I wish they were playing the Steelers or somebody
Mhm.
else who I didn't want to root for. Like
Yeah.
you and I both had a hard time picking this game too. And like you at the last minute kind of switched to the Texans so we would have, one pick differently. But I think we were both rooting for both teams. So I mean, I'm happy with how it turned out. I'm really happy for them. And I mean, think about next year. So Tank Dell went out with that injury. Think about
Yeah.
how, I mean, the connection with Nico Collins has been immaculate. I mean, Stroud has been amazing with him. He had Collins finish with 96 yards and a touchdown here. Think about when Tank Dell and Nico Collins have the entire season together next year with CJ Stroud throwing to them. I mean,
Yeah.
this is their first time in the divisional round since 2019. So I'm excited to see how this team continues to develop. Obviously, I mean, it'll be interesting to see how far they make it this postseason. But I mean, your first postseason game as a rookie and just shy of perfect passer rating. I mean, 157.2, that's
Yeah.
amazing.
Incredible. We didn't even talk about that, but to play as well as he did, and yeah, just shy of a perfect passer rating. It doesn't get any better than that. And an incredible rookie season, and it puts the NFL on notice, and it definitely puts the AFC South on notice that we got a franchise quarterback, we got a hell of a head coach, and we're here to stay. Like they're going to be contenders in that division, if not the favorites, for years to come. So Trevor Lawrence and those Jags better get shit fixed in a hurry.
Exactly. I mean, and how often do we see quarterbacks taken in the first couple picks and then, if they're thrust into a starting position their rookie season, they have a rough year and then, it's year 2, 3, 4 where we start to see them finally come together. I mean, he is now the earliest taken quarterback as a rookie to win in the postseason.
Yeah, it's
So
incredible.
he shut down a lot of haters and proved a lot of historically correct statements wrong in this game. So an absolute statement win for the Texans, and I'm intrigued to see how the rest of the season plays out for them.
Yeah, it's going to be a great game against the Ravens. We're going to make our picks for that later in the week, but another great defense and a great quarterback matchup. Lamar Jackson, who's the league MVP, against the best rookie, CJ Stroud. That, is going to be a lot of fun to watch. So I can't wait for the divisional round matchups coming up this weekend. How about Dolphins Chiefs? And at kickoff, -4 degrees in Arrowhead, making it the fourth coldest game in NFL history. And we talked about it on the preview how big of a difference it is for the Dolphins losing that Bills game to now be playing on the road in the cold in Arrowhead as opposed to at home in Miami, right?
I mean, this game is going to be iconic. Those still shots of Andy Reid's mustache just icicled up with, his breath. I mean, that's hilarious. Like that's going to forever be the representation of this game. I mean, we saw this game coming from a mile away.
Hmm.
What was so Tua has never won in a game he's 0-6 in games under 45 degrees.
Yeah.
45, not freezing, not even like yeah, there was no way the Dolphins were going to come here and win this. And you and I were dead on with this one. I mean, that that Chiefs defense held Miami to 151 yards, 6 first downs. They were 0-7 on third down. I mean, what little offensive push the Dolphins tried, that defense completely shut down.
Yeah, and they stopped the run. They stuffed the run completely. Raheem Mostert held to just 33 yards. Devon Achane with like less yards than carries. I mean, they didn't allow them to run the ball at all, and that's been one of the keys of the Dolphins all season. And then you put all the pressure on Tua, and and the secondary played great as well. L'Jarius Sneed, and they were getting after him, getting after Tua as well, playing physical. And the Dolphins tried in the pregame, coming out there without sleeves and trying to act like they're not bothered by the cold. And that played for about half a quarter, maybe into the first quarter. And then you could tell that they were bothered by it and they weren't tackling effectively and poor effort at times. And the Chiefs seemed to be right in their comfort zone and embraced the cold and played great football despite it,
Yeah, I mean, Miami's defense in this game showed up in the red zone, but with their missing starters, their edge rushers have been out for a few weeks now. I mean, they tried to keep the game close going into the second half, but I mean, the cold just got to him and the game ran away. You mentioned L'Jarius Sneed. He only allowed 2 receptions for 20 yards on 8 targets thrown his direction towards Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. I mean,
Yeah.
through his matchup this season against them in their other 2 games, I mean, or in their other game, it was only a single reception on 8 combined targets to them. I mean, he is one of my favorite defensive players in the league. And this game was a perfect example of why. Like, no one really talks about him. He doesn't make a lot of noise. He's not out, running his mouth a la Richard Sherman, but he is quietly so reliable on that defense. And I think he's a key reason why this Chiefs team can pull off wins even when they've had a shaky past couple months.
Yeah, their defense this year is like the strength of the team. And they played to that advantage. I think Isaiah Pacheco was a key in this game as well, 89 yards and a touchdown. He's starting to grow on me. The way he runs the ball, the physical attitude, he refuses to go down on the first tackle and keeps his legs going. Patrick Mahomes, no turnovers. That's a key. That's a recipe for a win as well. And
Rashee Rice in this game. I mean,
yeah,
talk about rookies putting up insane numbers this year. I mean, 8 catches, 130 yards. He had a touchdown. I mean, the 130 yards was a Chiefs rookie wide receiver record. But I mean, he had a touchdown, a second touchdown. It got wiped out with a penalty, but I mean, he was running all over the place. After the catch, he put up so many yards. And it's been interesting because we've kind of seen Travis Kelce, who, I mean, obviously it was him and Tyreek Hill who were Mahomes' favorite targets. We've kind of seen Kelce's numbers fall off this year, but these rookies are really stepping in, especially Rashee Rice, to kind of fill those gaps.
Yeah, a lot of talk about Valdez Scantling and Kadarius Toney and the drops, right? But Travis Kelce with 3 drops in this game, and you can blame it somewhat on the cold. You can blame it on Taylor Swift being in the box.
He was
I don't know.
distracted.
Yeah, distracted, but and he was obviously upset. You could see it when he on 2 of those drops where he's just looking at his hands and like punching the ground and. So the Chiefs are going to need to get that figured out. They're going to need Travis Kelce to be a more reliable weapon if they're going to go on another Super Bowl run. You can't rely on just rookie Rashee Rice. I mean, if you don't have Kelce, who do you really rely on in that receiving corps? So they're going to need him to step up.
Yeah, I mean, Kelce didn't have the worst game. I mean, he had 7 receptions for 71 yards. So he's averaging over 10 yards per reception, but that's not what we expect from Travis Kelce in the postseason. So I feel like we just have different expectations of him. But for most teams, having, a number 1 and a number 2 at 130 and 71, like that's a great 1-2 punch, but definitely not what we're used to from Mahomes and those receivers, especially when their running game can be questionable in some games.
Yeah, absolutely. So big win for the Chiefs. We called it. We expected it. Um, the Dolphins finished the season on a 3-game losing streak after starting 11-4, and talk about them being the 1 seed in the AFC. They go on a 3-game losing streak. Do you think this was just a bad matchup, the cold weather, or do you think the Ravens game, the Bills game, now this one, that the Dolphins were exposed a little bit to end the season here?
Oh, I mean, look at how the Dolphins performed against teams that were over 500 all season.
Yep.
I thought their numbers were just fully inflated, and as soon as they got to the postseason, they would lose. I mean, they made it into the postseason after putting up 70 points in one game this season, and they only put up 7. When they're playing good teams, the Dolphins cannot perform. And this is exactly what I expected.
Yeah, and they play so much better in September, October, not in November, December. They seem to be built for they're an early season team, not a late season team, and that's not something you want to be known for, right?
Yeah, and I mean, because the Lions won this weekend, the Dolphins now have the longest drought since their most recent playoff win. That was over
Yep.
23 years ago. So they now get to hold the title. The Lions got to kind of pass that on. So, not a great look for the Dolphins. I'll be intrigued to see what they do to kind of correct some of these issues. But a quick shout out in this game. I know we know it was a cold game. Like it was cold enough that Patrick Mahomes' helmet shattered. I
Yeah.
mean, but Harrison Butker converted all 4 of his field goals, both extra points. And when the weather is that bad and the temperatures are that low, that football feels like a brick.
Hmm.
Andy Reid said it was like kicking a block of ice, and we don't see a ton of good kicks in cold weather. If they go wide left or go short on a field goal, you're like, oh, it's because it's cold. He was 6 for 6, so shout out to him and his lead foot because that's impressive. If you've ever played football in the cold and tried to catch a really cold football, imagine kicking one. So
Yeah,
I'm impressed with that.
absolutely. And thanks for bringing that up about Mahomes' helmet. So he appeared to lower his helmet and lead with his helmet on that play. I wonder if he's going to get fined for that because we know if it had been the defender that lowered his helmet and caused that to happen, he would have been fined and flagged, right?
Hmm.
And also going back to that play, why were the Dolphins or why were the Chiefs not charged a timeout for that?
So
So
So they're charged timeouts if someone needs to like adjust their pads or retie a cleat. But this wasn't like an improper use. Like he didn't apply his helmet improperly. It's not like they forgot to tie a cleat or they tied it poorly and the cleat came untied or something and a shoe came off. In those situations, absolutely charge them a penalty. It was equipment failure. Like he didn't use his helmet wrong. It just broke. I don't think that was a personal offense. I think, if they go to kick the football and the football pops open, it's the same situation. Like it's a field timeout. I don't think the team should be charged for that because it wasn't an improper use of equipment. It wasn't his fault that his helmet shattered. So it
yeah.
kind of makes sense.
Yeah, and then just a couple gripes I have with officiating, looking for stuff. But and then how about that
Mhm.
that roughing the passer called
Oh my God.
on Mahomes when he just got shoved, and that
Yeah.
was it.
It
And
was the
compare
softest roughing the passer I have ever seen.
yeah, and compare that to what Matthew Stafford took and didn't get a flag. So I just wish, and I think we all wish that the NFL would show more consistency.
Mhm. Well, Matt
And
Stafford and Baker Mayfield.
yeah, and why is it always the superstar quarterback that gets those ticky tack calls and not
Mhm.
Justin Fields has gotten hit like that so many times this year and has never gotten that call. I don't understand it, and it appears that they're not even trying to hide it. It's super biased, superstar calls. It's getting to, like the NBA. You know what I mean?
Well, and I mean, think about some of the hits that Tua has taken. Like we've seen
Yeah,
Tua have back-to-back concussions and stuff. Some of the hits that Tua takes, if those hits were done to Mahomes, those people would be out
yeah.
of the league, man. They would be suspended, they would be ejected from the game. And it's just interesting. Like, and I, as a Packers fan, you know, I know Aaron Rodgers got the benefit of some of those calls.
Hmm. So you
So
know it
I
when
I
you see
can't,
it.
yeah, I can't
Yeah,
say too much, but I think it's absolutely unfair that it's so lopsided. And they
Yeah,
definitely have their favorites, and we just see bad calls against certain quarterbacks or missed calls. And I mean, it puts them at risk for an injury. And then those defenses learn, oh, I'm not going to get called if I, do something a little slimy here. And then they just
yeah,
continue to it for the game.
yeah. It's a totally different approach. Like if it's Mahomes, I can't touch him, or Josh Allen, I can't touch him. But if it's like Justin Fields or someone or Tua that doesn't get the calls, I can spear him. I can land with my body weight. I should be good. You know what I mean?
Well, speaking
Yeah.
of, Josh Allen, so Patrick Mahomes has never played a road playoff game before.
Yep.
So this next matchup is going to be interesting for him because they got to go on the road for the first time into Buffalo. And obviously, the cold and the weather isn't really going to affect him as much, but it'll be interesting to see how he does on a road playoff game.
Well, I'll say this: Josh Allen and the Bills better play their best game of football all year because it's playoff Mahomes, it's the Chiefs, it's Andy Reid. We
Hmm.
know they're going to step up and play well. We've seen the Chiefs and Bills play in the playoffs before. And right now, in my mind, everything says, man, the Chiefs are just going to find a way. We talk about it, it's all about matchups, right? And Packers Cowboys. It's all about matchups. Packers have the Cowboys number. The Chiefs have the Bills number, and it's in Buffalo. Of all the years, of all the times to get it done, it's this weekend. Josh Allen and the Bills need to play their best game of the year. Get that win. Don't let this one slip through your fingers. You know what I mean? It's a great opportunity, and I hope they get it done.
Yeah, and I'm sure most of America is kind of sick of seeing the same, you know, Super Bowl reruns with the Chiefs. And I mean, I know it was a tough loss for the Eagles, which we'll talk about in a minute, but I'm kind of glad the Eagles are out. I don't want to see a rematch, you know? I want new,
Mhm.
fresh teams, fresh blood in the Super Bowl. So I'm hoping the Bills take care of business. But
I
as
would
much as oh, go
I
ahead.
would love to see a Bills Ravens AFC Championship game. I think that'd be a lot of fun.
Oh, I agree. My AFC
Yeah,
team versus your AFC team.
yeah, that'd be
Yeah,
awesome.
that would get scrappy. Speaking
But
of my teams, I feel like we
yeah,
should move on to the Packers Cowboys. I mean, talking about an upset.
this is incredible.
Yeah, and it's funny too because the score, I mean, Green Bay won 48-32. That was not a 48-32 game. That was a blowout until Green Bay was like, "All right, let's pull some of our players out, protect them from injuries." Dallas tried to make kind of a garbage time comeback there. So the scoreboard, if you're just looking at the scores, does not reflect the game. I mean, Green Bay should have won this one by 30 points.
Yeah, they were up 48-16, and it got a little touch and go there at the end because if the Cowboys could have, recovered one of those onside kicks that was a little bit close, then maybe we're talking about a closer game. But I agree with you. The Packers jumped all over Dallas. We're up 27-0, and then 48-16, completely dominated them. And the story of this game to me is the Cowboys defense. And where the hell were they? I mean, this is, we were talking about early in the season, the doomsday defense and Micah Parsons and Deron Bland and even Demarcus Lawrence and Dan Quinn being a head coach candidate.
Hmm.
And there was dudes, Romeo Dobbs was wide ass open multiple times in this game. How about
Well, and Lucas
Musgrave?
Musgraves.
Yeah, like
I cannot
stop.
believe how open he was. There wasn't a defender
Yeah,
within 30 yards any direction.
incredible. And who was it? Des Bryant tweeted. He was like, "I'm getting pissed." He's like, "How many times is Jordan Love gonna throw these fadeaway passes, and it's just dudes wide ass open?"
Yeah, I mean, they were completely outmatched in this game. And as much as Dallas's defense didn't show up, the Packers just had an almost perfect game. I mean,
Mhm.
we mentioned CJ Stroud's passer rating, 157.2. Jordan Love's was identical. 272 yards, 3 touchdowns. I mean, he was completely on fire. And those young receivers, I mean, this is the youngest team, the second youngest team in NFL history. The youngest went 0-16. So the youngest team
Mhm.
to make it to the postseason. I mean, Jordan Love earned himself an extra $500,000 as an escalator for next year's contract with this game. But I mean, Green Bay has dealt with injuries all season. This was the first game, the only game all season where they had every preferred skill position player in the game. I mean, Christian Watson played, Jair Alexander was in, everyone that we wanted, our number one for each position, we put up 48 points. I mean, if the
Yeah.
Packers stay healthy in this postseason, I mean, I'm not saying I'm getting my hopes up, but I might be getting my hopes up a little bit. I mean, we went from Brett Favre to Aaron Rodgers, and I had a lot of kind of questions. I was reserving judgment on Jordan Love because why on earth would we get three, back to back to back MVP kind of Hall of Fame type quarterbacks? Like that's not going to happen. But
Realistic.
after
Yeah.
this game, I mean, I am completely astounded by this game. Before the game, I took a screenshot with a timestamp. I redid my bracket and I chose the Packers to win. Did I think I was crazy for that? Yes. Was I hopeful? Yeah. But I mean, an hour before the game, I picked the Packers to win and it worked out. I am completely impressed by this team. And we talked about some Pro Bowl snubs this year. There were 4 teams in the NFL that had no Pro Bowls. The Packers were one of them.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, the other 3 are teams that claimed the number 1, number 2, and number 3 picks in the draft this year. The Cowboys had 7 Pro Bowlers, and they got their pants beat off by a team that was completely snubbed with the Pro Bowl. So that had to feel great for those Packers players.
And it was just interesting to me. I mean, right from the kickoff, right from the start, it looked like Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb were not on the same page. And it was just wild to me that you've got a lot on the line, and you're 0-5 against this team in AT&T Stadium. Of all times to show up and play your best ball, and Jordan Love is coming in red hot, and I don't know, I don't know what happened, but the Cowboys looked unprepared and like they didn't take it seriously, and the Packers just jumped on them. And once you get down 27-0, it's like, oh shit. And a lot of people were hoping, like, hey, we saw the Jags pull off a 27-0 comeback last year. Can the Cowboys do it? They got the offense to do it. They got the defense to do it, and they just couldn't. And the defense never showed up. The offense showed up late, and it wasn't enough. And credit to Jordan Love. I'll say this: he's the hottest quarterback statistically in the entire league right now. C.J. Stroud, that story is great. Jordan Love has thrown 21 touchdowns and just 1 interception since week 11. Dude is balling. And the biggest thing, we talk about it all the time, surrounding and situation and all that, and he's got rookie receivers and all that, but confidence, right? And it looks like Jordan Love is playing with extreme confidence, just like C.J. Stroud is, and he believes in his arm talent, and he believes he's going to make the right throw every time. I mean, early in the season, go back to at Raiders when Jordan Love threw 0 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, versus Detroit, a early season loss on, I believe that was Monday night, 1 touchdown, 2 picks. So he struggled early in the season, but he's figured it out since week 11 and is playing with extreme confidence. And who knows, who knows how far this team can go. We say it's about matchups in the playoffs. The Packers are a bad matchup for the Cowboys, and it doesn't seem to matter whether that's Aaron Rodgers or Jordan Love or Brett Favre or whoever, that the Packers are going to get the win and beat the Cowboys. Well, their next matchup against the Niners is the opposite. The Niners seem to have Green Bay's number, and it's a great defense, and it's going to be a lot of fun. Again, a great quarterback matchup with Jordan Love against Brock Purdy, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited about that matchup. I mean, you talked about how Jordan Love, how his confidence didn't waver during the game. There were 4 passes where he was under pressure. On those passes, he went 4 for 4, 114 yards and a touchdown, where he was under pressure. I mean, there was a couple, he was in the process of being tackled and he still completed some great throws. So hopefully that confidence carries over. I mean, his passer rating is the highest in a road playoff game in the Super Bowl era. I mean, he just passed Bart Starr in 66 and Dak Prescott last year in the wild card weekend win over Tampa Bay. So hopefully that confidence kind of carries them over. And I had talked about this in last week's prediction episode where I said I feel like the Cowboys, for them it's Super Bowl or bust. They're under so
Yeah,
much pressure to
yeah,
turn this season into something. I mean, this is the third season in a row that the Cowboys have had 12 wins and not been able to advance past this point in the playoffs. They're the first team in NFL history to, 12 games in a 12 wins and still not be able to make it past this point. I mean, that's got to be awful. It's got to be so depressing. I mean, we saw some retired Dallas players go off on their various podcasts and social media about how devastating and embarrassing this win is for Dallas. And I mean, that's got to be so tough.
yeah. We're gonna have a Michael Irvin soundbite to kick this episode off, so you guys
Mhm.
can, it's a great soundbite for the playoffs. And yeah, I mean, Mike McCarthy, 3 straight seasons of 12-5, and the results 1-3 in the playoffs. And who would ever think you go 12-5, 12-5, 12-5, and get fired? But I think it's likely. I think Mike McCarthy is fired, and then it opens the door to a lot of different options. Do you go Jim Harbaugh? Do you go Bill Belichick? Some have even suggested Mike Tomlin.
Mhm.
Unlikely that Mike Tomlin would be available, but Bill Belichick and Jim Harbaugh, absolutely.
That's
And
interesting too, because we talked about the storylines going into this week about how McCarthy's playing his old team, and he said it didn't matter who they were playing, which I thought was a little rude. Like most coaches would say something more PC, like, yeah, it'll be a great matchup. We got a lot of history. He was like, oh, I don't care who we're playing. Like, I'm
yeah,
glad the Packers beat them just for that. Like, this will be the second time the Packers get Mike McCarthy fired. Like, that's what he gets for running his mouth.
and I think he took the wrong approach. I think you embrace it. I think you say, "Hey, look, this is a team that we've struggled against. Let's go prove everybody wrong. Let's go put the Packers. Let's beat the Packers finally. Let's take advantage of this. Aaron Rodgers isn't over there anymore. Let's send our dogs on defense after Jordan Love and get the win. And we got the interception leader out here in Deron Bland. They got a bunch of rookie receivers and second year receivers, but instead they almost acted like scared and tiptoeing around this team, and it certainly backfired. And another big question here is, what about Dak Prescott? A lot of Cowboy fans are talking about we need to move on from Dak Prescott. What do you think of that?
I don't think that's the approach. I mean, he led the lead in passing touchdowns in the season. Jordan Love was the second. But I don't think that's the issue. I mean, your defense let a team of rookies put up 48 points. Like
Yeah,
their worst loss in the postseason until this game was a 38-point game. Like if
yeah.
your defense is letting a bunch of youngins put up almost 50, I don't think your quarterback, who leads the league in a lot of different categories, is the issue.
And he almost, I mean, it was garbage time, but he was getting them back in the game. He almost got them back within a score.
Yeah, I
So,
mean, they were down, what, 48-16 when he and CeeDee Lamb started really connecting and kind of clicking like
yeah,
we've seen. I mean,
yeah,
going into this game, Dallas had won 16 in a row at home.
yeah.
So, I feel like maybe they just were riding oh, we're playing, a first year starter. It's not Aaron Rodgers anymore. It's a different story. We're, perfect at home. I I mean, the Packers are now 6-0 at AT&T Stadium, including their Super Bowl win, which wasn't against the Cowboys, obviously. But I mean, that's 3 straight postseason wins in a row for the Packers over the Cowboys.
Yeah. And so, it's about matchups. And I think if I'm Dallas, I go get, whether it's Bill Belichick, I would lean Belichick, right, to fix that defense. And we've seen what Belichick's been able to do with Tom Brady. And maybe, bring Josh McDaniels with you as OC and get more out of Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb. And, I think that you do need to make a complete coaching staff change.
Hmm.
Get McCarthy out of there. Get Dan Quinn out of there. And not to say that Dan Quinn's a bad coach, but the defense no showed, and so heads have got to roll for that. An unacceptable performance and a great win for Green Bay, and we'll see. I tend to think that it's a magical run
Hmm.
that's going to come to an end in San Francisco against truly one of the best teams in football.
Yeah,
But
and San
if they pull
Francisco,
that off,
Yeah.
Yeah,
San Francisco is the nemesis
yeah,
for Green Bay in the postseason. I mean, the last time Green Bay beat them in the postseason was in 1998, 10 months before Jordan Love was born.
yeah.
So we
I
have
mean, if
seen
Jordan
San
Love can deliver
Francisco.
that, but I doubt it. And it'll be a very interesting matchup, though. It's going to have a lot of eyes on it, and hopefully we get some good games and less blowouts. And speaking of, the best game of the weekend, the Rams
Which
and the
is a
Lions.
shock, right? If you had asked me which was going to be the best game of the weekend, Rams Lions was not my top pick.
Oh, I thought it was going to be great. What, you thought the Rams were going to destroy the Lions?
No, I just didn't think that would be the best
The
game.
best game?
Like
I mean,
I thought
storylines
Browns
galore.
Texans would be more competitive. I thought Packers Cowboys would be a close game, but the Cowboys would probably pull off the win. I mean, these blowouts were not predictable.
Yeah, yeah, and this one had storylines everywhere.
Oh my
Stafford
God, yeah.
against Goff, Goff against the Rams, Stafford against the Lions, McVay versus Goff. Uh, a great matchup, and the atmosphere, right? A playoff game back in Detroit for the first time since 1993, and the Lions jump out to a 14-3 lead and hang on to win 24-23, but it got close there at the end. Stafford was putting the team on his back, playing through injury like he did multiple times in Detroit. That's why the Lions fans loved him for so long.
Hmm.
But to me, the difference maker in the game, the Lions' red zone defense, stepping up, making plays, and holding the Rams to field goals instead of touchdowns.
Yeah, I think that was key. I mean, we saw the Rams make some bad play calls here. They left some points on the board there that shouldn't have been left on there. And
Mm-hmm.
it as much as we saw the Rams make mistakes, Detroit had a really good game. I mean, it's been 65 years since they, won a championship, and that was before it was called a Super Bowl. So they've had one postseason win, which was, 30 years ago. And
Yeah.
during that time, we have seen just, so many problems with the organization. Detroit football is a saying, Detroit is cursed, God hates Detroit. Like there's been so many things. I mean, they ended their 9-game postseason losing streak, which was the longest in NFL history. So now they no longer hold that record of, having the longest postseason win drought. I mean, we saw some beautiful moments during this game. Frank Ragnow and Matt Stafford had an in-game interaction where they hugged it out, they exchanged "I loved yous," and then when they were leaving the field, they're like, "I miss you, man. Yeah, I miss you too." So there was a lot of respect, mutual respect, going between Stafford and Detroit players and Detroit fans. And I was pretty proud of them for not booing him too much. There was one situation, apparently Stafford's wife and girls, his daughters, got booed by some fans. We're going to assume that was a
Mhm.
very small percentage of people at that game. But I mean, such a good storyline. And I'm really, really happy Detroit pulled this one off. I thought their demons would come back and bite them and they would lose it in a close game. But I'm really happy for the city of Detroit. They've needed this for a while.
Yeah, a huge, load off their shoulders, a huge playoff win, and we'll see how far they can ride this, uh, this momentum and this playoff run. It's a great opportunity. They're going to host another playoff game this weekend against Tampa Bay, but you know, it late in this game, you started to feel like even in the second half, to start the second half, the Rams get the ball, and you felt like it was an opportunity for the Rams to go take the lead.
Hmm.
And typical Detroit would blow that lead, and the Rams would go take it and put the pressure on the Lions, and they'd turn the ball over. To their credit, no turnovers for Goff, no turnovers for Stafford. But there was some interesting. The officiating, in my opinion, was a little bit interesting, and let me know what you think about this. So there was one spot where the Rams jumped off sides, and the Lions were called for a false start. Um,
Yeah, I saw
that
that
would have
one.
that would have been a first down Detroit. Instead, it was 3rd and 10. So that was one bad call in the game. Another one where the first drive of the second half, the Rams are driving down, trying to take the lead and swing momentum, and it looked like the defender got there early, and it should have been pass interference, and no call on that one. The Rams had to punt. We saw Stafford get hit on that sack that forced him to go get checked out and leave the game for a second. And I don't know about you, but that with the roughing the passer we've seen on Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen this weekend, I definitely felt like that should have been roughing the passer. Don't you agree?
Yeah, I mean, I just scrolled back up to our messages during the game. I mean, if that was Mahomes, someone would have been ejected for that hit. That should have been roughing the passer. And you said if that had been
Yeah.
Goff too. And I said the
He
ball
took a
was long
forearm
gone.
to the head. Yeah.
I know the ball had been out for seconds. I just the inconsistencies in reffing just irk me so much. I hate when there's a close game and it can be easily chalked up to a couple big plays where the refs didn't call something that should have been called something wrong, or, pick and choose things to call against one team and not the other. I
Mhm.
absolutely despise when refereeing interferes with the outcomes of games.
Yeah. And then at the very end as well, it looked like, because Puka Nacua, credit to him, he was
Hmm.
going nuts. He was going crazy in this game, almost undefendable. 9 catches for 181 yards and a touchdown. And on the last chance for the Rams, it looked like he was tugged at the top of his route, and they
Yep.
missed that as well. But there was former defenders, former corners on Twitter saying, "You do that and just hope that it doesn't get called," you know. And
Yeah.
so they got
And
away
we
with it. But
well, and we know he's had an amazing season, but that's a rookie record in this round
yeah,
as well. Like, so he continued to have an amazing game. I mean, the Rams outgained Detroit by almost 100 yards.
mm-hmm.
So, I mean, a really tough loss for the Rams. But they got to build that secondary up this offseason. I mean, they've got some great offensive players. They've got Stafford, they've got Nakua, Cooper Kupp, Kyron Williams. But I mean, you got to get some people in there to kind of match, the production of Aaron Donald and Kobe Turner. You can't just be relying on your offense to win games because I mean, in this one, if the defense had stepped up in a couple of key places, I mean, they wouldn't have had to attempt to come back at the end of the game.
Yeah, I agree 100%. The defense is what cost the Rams the game. Not just the secondary. Akello Witherspoon got burned a couple times. Quentin Lake got burned a
Mhm.
couple times. And I tweeted 4 or 5 times. Michael Hoyt, the linebacker, number 97, got burned 4, 5, 6 times in this game. And they kept putting the outside linebacker, Michael Hoyt, in pass coverage. Like he was effective when he was blitzing, but when they put him out or stopping the run, but when they put him out in coverage against Jahmyr Gibbs, or they even had him on a Monroe St. Brown at one point, and these dudes just made him whiff multiple times. And it's like, at what point are the Rams going to learn, hey, Michael Hoyt isn't a good coverage guy? You know what I mean? And so they need to address those issues on defense for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, one of the storylines in this game was the quarterback swap and the quarterback matchups. But I mean, shout out to both of those guys. Their cute passer ratings. I mean, 121.8 for Goff and 120.9. I mean,
Yeah.
those it just kind of shows that the switch was the right thing for both of these quarterbacks. They're both doing better in their new situation. And I mean, how often do we see a perfectly even matched trade that ends up being the best for both parties?
hmm Yeah, it's a great matchup, a great storyline, all the game. And one bad thing about this game, Rams tight end Tyler Higbee, who got
Hmm.
hit in the knee late in the game, a low hit, suffered a torn ACL on the play. Um, the NFL has put such an emphasis on high hits. Even if it's shoulder to shoulder, if it's high and decleats a player, you're going to see the flag thrown. So you've got defenders now going low, and this is the issue with that if you go low like that, you can blow someone's knee out. And Chris Collinsworth said it on the broadcast. To you can ask every receiver every offensive player in the game, would you rather get hit high or get hit low at the knees? And they'll all tell you they'd rather get hit high. But the NFL's put the emphasis on the concussions and the head safety, and as a result, you're seeing knees get blown out, Achilles, ACLs, and you know, I don't know what the recipe is because you can't suddenly start penalizing players for going low and high because how are you going to play defense? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Just I mean, you mentioned the ACL. I forgot to mention linebacker for the Packers, Kingsley Enagbare. He
Mm-hmm.
also is believed to have torn his ACL. I haven't seen an official thing on that, but he was underwriting test today. I didn't see any results, but they were about 90% sure that he did as well. So not a great weekend for ACLs. But yeah, I mean, we've talked all season about how these rules are made to protect players, but I mean, how many other seasons can we count this many ACL injuries? It seems so much higher than usual.
Yeah, I think that the rules in place, especially for head issues, they're not necessarily there to protect the players. They're there to protect the brand. They're there to
Mhm.
protect the league, the shield, because they don't want any more lawsuits like we've
Well, and
seen
it's
from former players.
I was just gonna say it's funny too because nobody's out talking about, starting a lawsuit or like player petitions and stuff about ACLs. I mean,
Yeah.
the only thing we've seen is a mild push towards having grass fields instead of turf fields, but concussions are a massive deal. Obviously, an ACL doesn't affect your mental acuity and, cause lifelong mental issues, but
But it can
the
also limit the length of your career the same
mhm.
way concussions can. So, and long-term mental effects and all that, yes. But what about long-term knee issues and limping around? Derrick Rose talked about that when he played for the Bulls, and we've seen former Colts linebacker Gary Brackett having to have multiple surgeries on his knees. Like you see it, it's just not as talked about. The national media coverage is all concussions. It's
Mhm.
not shoulder, knee, back, stuff like that.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously all injuries are awful and we should do what we can to limit those injuries, but it's interesting how the media narrative focuses on one and not the other.
Yeah, and I saw a really good quote from someone too that said, if you are trying, if your goal is to eliminate injuries from football, you're gonna end up with no football.
Mhm.
He's like, it's a violent game. It's always been a violent game, and injuries have existed since the first game of football ever. There's no way around it. We see injuries in basketball, in baseball, in tennis, in golf. That's human nature. There's going to be injuries. You can't. You can do as much as you can to protect players, but at the end of the day, there's always going to be injuries.
Yeah, there's only so much you can do without, ruining the game.
Yeah.
So,
So.
that being said, it's fine. We can go off on our soapboxes here. That being said, guys, we have an interview coming up tomorrow. That I don't know if we're gonna give it away or not. Alex, you want to?
Um, let's just say, Lions fans, you're gonna want to tune into this one. It's a big interview, and it's relevant to
Yeah.
this playoff run and the Detroit Lions. So,
Yeah,
and
I
it's a
mean,
great interview. We,
it's gonna
we're
be
both
so
really
good.
excited for it.
Yeah, I mean, the Lions last won a playoff game 32 years ago, and it's super relevant to how long of a drought it's been. So you guys absolutely should tune in for that one. But speaking of, needing to tune in for things, is it me or was that Steelers at Bills game just absolutely boring?
I mean, it wasn't the best matchup for the weekend, that's for sure. But it was interesting. Like the Bills got out to a 21-0 lead, and the Steelers actually cut it to one score. It was 24-17, and I was messaging you about it. I said, "Here we go. Here's the momentum shift. Here come the Steelers." And you're
Okay,
like,
you
"Shut
did
up."
that with every game.
But I'm pointing out because we've seen major
Mhm.
comebacks before unexpectedly,
Yeah,
and
which funny though, because this
those are the
weekend
signs.
there were so many opportunities for there to be a comeback in most of these games. Obviously, the
Yeah,
Browns kind of didn't stand a chance there, but I mean, Dallas started maybe going for a comeback. The Dolphins didn't really go for one either, but like the Rams game, there was almost a comeback. There could have been one here.
yeah,
They kind of cut it close. But you know, the momentum kind of died off there for a little bit. I mean, Josh Allen came out of the gate swinging with this one. They, 10 play, 80-yard scoring march to kick the game off, and then another touchdown drive on the next one. I mean, 52-yard rushing score. It was beautiful. The Bills came into this game hot. Their defense kind of let off the gas a little bit there in the middle. But we've seen Mason Rudolph overcome some pretty unsurmountable odds over the past month, and it seemed like, he was coming into this game ready to pull off another surprise win, but he seemed overwhelmed and outmatched for most of this game.
yeah, and it wasn't just him too. George Pickens had a fumble loss. Pat Fryermuth should have had a fumble loss that was overturned on replay. And Rudolph did have an interception in the end zone that was very costly. Shout out to Kyer Elam. That was big. And that's one thing that Mason Rudolph had done a good job of was protecting the football. But that interception was costly. And we had a feeling in Buffalo against a red hot Bills team that the Steelers were going to be overmatched and their 3 game winning streak was going to come to an end. Um, but to me, I mean, the Bills are up 21-0. They had an opportunity to go up 24-0, and that blocked field goal really seemed to change momentum. And it's a big difference between 24-0 and they were able to cut it to 21-10. But credit to the Bills, they keep enough ahead that they're able to win it pretty comfortably.
Yeah, I mean, well, they did win this one. The Bills have been paying a cost for these wins. I mean, getting to this game, they were missing a handful of, key contributors for them. And then during this game, I mean, Terrell Bernard, he's been insane for that defense. He was carted off after suffering what is believed to be a sprained ankle in this one. So it'll be interesting to see how that affects him moving forward. Defensive backs, Christian Benford and Teron Johnson exited with injuries during this game.
Yeah,
Rasul Douglas was inactive due to an injury in this one. I mean,
they're gonna need him against Kansas City. They need Razul.
yeah, and he has been such a performer for them since they got him from Green Bay. So I'm hoping he comes back in. And it's a short week for them now because the game got moved. So it'll be interesting to see how they match up with Kansas City.
Yeah, and someone we talked to Andre Reed about, Khalil Shakir, uh,
Hmm.
stepped up really big in this game. He's a playoff performer. Even as a rookie last year, played a big role, and I expect him, to continue to play a big role. Um, you know, it, Josh Allen played a great game, 4 touchdowns, no turnovers, had that big touchdown run. And something about that touchdown run, if you look closely, he appears to do a little bit of a move like he's going to fake a slide and
Yeah.
then keeps running. And no one goes for that slide, and he's able to keep running. But then later in the game, they throw the flag for a slide, which was shoulder to shoulder contact. The NFL needs to look at how they're officiating Josh Allen because right now it seems pretty damn unfair for defenses.
Yeah, that was definitely shoulder to shoulder. I don't think it should have been a penalty there.
Yeah,
And it was weird too, because from one camera angle, it did look like it could have been kind of a dirty hit. And then they replayed it at different camera angles and we're like, oh no, it wasn't. But the penalty,
they had already thrown the flag.
yeah,
And
but they can pull it
why?
back. We have seen them so many times. Like during the Green Bay game, somebody dropped a yellow towel. The flag
Yeah,
thing came up on the scoreboard, and then they were like, "Oh no, there's no penalty." Like it's not that hard to admit you were wrong. You had the call wrong. Like, oops, our
if they
bad, not a
can
penalty.
do it in college football, I don't understand why they can't do it in the pros, especially in the playoffs, right? Like it's not that hard. It doesn't take that much time to have someone up in the booth that's watching the replays and can signal, radio down to the ref and be like, hey, let's pick that one up. That was a clean hit. And the NFL just seems so, whether it's protecting star players or what, they don't want to, admit wrong ever. They're just like, nope, we made the call. It was close. So we're going to err on the side of caution. It's like, man, like, if a call like that affects the outcome of a game, people are going to lose their shit.
Mm-hmm. And it's funny in this game, that 52-yard touchdown run by Josh Allen, it's the second longest touchdown run by a quarterback in NFL postseason history. So 4 yards shorter than, and this is completely relevant to this weekend, 4 yards shorter than Colin Kaepernick's 56-yard rushing touchdown in the divisional round in 2012 versus Green Bay. And the 49ers won that one 45-31. So, that kind of goes back to, I guess, not even the start of Green Bay's postseason woes against the 49ers, but it's just interesting how relevant that he's the second to that one. I just like the relevance of that stat. I had to share that one.
I remember how unstoppable he was in that game. Like they were doing, that was the era of the quarterback read option, and he like fakes the run, and the Green Bay Packer linebackers literally
God.
facing the other way.
So stupid.
He goes running by him.
But that season, I kind of didn't care. Like, we had just won the Super Bowl. I didn't care if we won 0 games. Like, we won in 2011. Like, why are we even in the postseason? Let's just like relax and enjoy the Super Bowl. I had no expectations that year, kind of like this year. So, you know, but I mean, this upcoming match for Buffalo is going to be much harder for them. I mean, their version of the boogeyman is in Kansas City. That's a tough matchup for them. But now the Chiefs have to come to them. So it'll be interesting to see if their, home field advantage edge kind of holds at home or not.
My personal prediction, as far as will it matter, Mahomes and the Chiefs playing on the road, I don't think that will matter much at all. I just think the Bills are capable of going into Arrowhead too and winning. They got the talent, they got the quarterback, they got the defense. They need Rasul Douglas to play. The Chiefs aren't as potent offensively, but they're good, pretty good defensively. But the Bills need to play their best game of the year, almost perfect, to be able to pull this one off. We've seen the Bills play damn near perfect, and with 13, 12 seconds left on the clock, still found a way to lose. So this is going to be a lot of fun.
I would like to point out that Monday was the 4th time in history that the Bills and the Steelers have met in the postseason. The winner in each of the 3 previous matchups of those two teams went to the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
So, I guess congratulations, Bills. No, obviously I would love for that to happen, but they have some big bad wolves to beat up between now and then. But let's take a quick moment. Let's talk about Mike Tomlin in this situation. So this game was the one that kind of pushed him into the record for the longest tenured head coach. It was, he was 1 game short last week, so this was the one. But I mean, is this going to be his last game there? Like we saw him storm out of an interview when they asked him about his future there. I mean, he's under contract for another year, but I mean, what a rough way to go out if that is how his, tenure ends in Pittsburgh.
I wouldn't. I mean, unless he had major input on the Kenny Pickett draft pick. If he signed off on that, then maybe. But he can't help the fact that they don't have a quarterback. If that wasn't his decision, if that's on the GM, then maybe fire the GM. But Mike Tomlin's never had a losing record, and the fact that they even made the playoffs, the fact that they went 10-7 to get to this point, or is shocking to me. So no way in hell, if the Steelers fire Mike Tomlin, that's a mistake. You're not going to go out and hire anybody that's better than Mike Tomlin, in my opinion, unless it's Bill Belichick. And even then, Bill Belichick's old. He's not going to coach for very much longer. Keep Mike Tomlin. And I think the Steelers will keep Mike Tomlin. Their biggest issue is go get a quarterback. Go get someone like Russell Wilson or Kirk Cousins or
Joe Flacco.
Yeah, Joe Flacco, someone that can elevate the team along with don't waste TJ Watt's prime, right? Uh, they need a quarterback is the big issue, not head coach. So if they get rid of Tomlin, it's a mistake.
I mean, I agree with you that, Kenny Pickett probably isn't on him. However, that's their fifth playoff game loss in a row.
Mm-hmm.
So it goes back long before Pickett was in town. So I mean, if,
Well,
if you're
that,
looking at his postseason record, it's a little bit different than his regular season record, you know? You
yeah,
gotta count
but
him for some of that.
that was Big Ben at the end of his career, and he was a shell of himself at the end of his career. I think that if we're gonna talk about his playoff losses, then you're holding him accountable for the same thing that you're are saying that he's good at, which is taking teams that aren't that good and getting them to the playoffs only to lose, right? So I think put more talent around him. Mike Tomlin's proven that he's capable of taking the teams on a deep playoff run to the Super Bowl to win a Super Bowl. He's been to two Super Bowls. He's got one. I say, you put Russell Wilson on that Steelers team, they instantly become a team that you believe can go on a deep playoff run, right?
Yeah. I
So,
just I just had to argue the other side there. You were defending him. I just had to point that out. Because those were all during his tenure.
yeah,
Okay, but let's
that I'm not. Yeah,
you
let's
want
go Bucks Eagles.
I mean,
Uh,
we had talked many times later in the season about how much of a collapse Philadelphia was undergoing. And
yeah,
man, if 9 points doesn't just echo everything we've been saying for the past 5 weeks.
yeah, it's amazing how bad it got, and it's crazy. Did you see that AJ Brown before this game went on Instagram and deleted all the Philly stuff off of
Hmm.
his Instagram, and then didn't play. And it to me, man, the Eagles are a mess.
Hmm.
And if I'm gonna fire a head coach, I'm gonna fire Nick Sirianni. I think he's lost the locker room. I think that change mid-season to take Sean Desai out of defensive coordinator and put in Matt Patricia completely backfired. I think that the talent was still there. I think the players quit on Nick Sirianni. I really do, and I don't think that he handled it very well either.
I mean, it's crazy to think that, a head coach, after making three consecutive postseason appearances, I mean, they went to a Super Bowl. Like,
Yeah.
but they finished their season 1-6. The amount of
Hmm.
talent that was completely wasted in the last 7 weeks of this season. And like this is the Buccaneers they're playing. They made the Buccaneers look amazing. I mean, we talked about how the Bucks have played down to the level of each team they've played. I mean, to quote unquote win the division. I mean, they
Yeah.
kind of fell into the division title there. But I mean, 9-0 over the Panthers, who are the worst team in the league this year. They barely
Yep.
made it to the postseason. They put up 32 points. I mean, Baker Mayfield looked like an MVP quarterback in this game. I mean, 337 yards, three touchdowns. Rashad White had an amazing game. I mean, Todd Bowles' defense looked amazing. I mean, they were relentless. Jalen Hurts was getting beat up everywhere. I mean, 53.8% on blitz. I mean, he had like Baker Mayfield has had more head coaches over the past 6 years of his career than any other quarterback in NFL
eight,
history.
eight head coaches in 6 years.
That is mind-boggling
Yeah.
how good he looked on this team in this game. I mean, it looked like Tom Brady was still in Tampa Bay for a minute there. Like it's I can't believe how bad the Eagles played in this game. And I love Baker Mayfield and I know he had a great game, but man, if the Eagles didn't help him look real good.
Yeah, missed tackles,
Oh my God,
undisciplined.
everywhere.
Yeah, really bad effort from the Eagles. But Baker woke up feeling dangerous, so we have to give him credit for that. And if Mike Evans and Chris Godwin didn't have a couple drops, the score would have been even worse. They would have thrown up 40 on them.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, Mike Evans, was it the first possession where he had an awful drop? He had both hands on the ball and just dropped it. I thought that
yeah,
was going to be the trajectory of the game. I thought it was going to be slightly off thrown passes and dropped passes. And I was concerned for a second there, but I mean, Baker didn't let it get to him at all. They connected great later in the game. He just kind of shrugged it off and kept going, which is something that we've appreciated about Baker Mayfield, is he does not let the negative stuff that he's faced in his career get to him.
Yeah, he said recently that he's enjoying playing football again, and I think he's playing with the most confidence he's had since Cleveland, and so, and maybe the most ever. So I'm happy for him, a big playoff win, and I hope that the Bucks bring that same energy to Detroit because they're going to need it in a hostile environment against a very good Lions team. The biggest thing they're going to need is the defense. The defense is capable. I mean, look, they put up a shutout against the Panthers, and they held the Eagles to 9 points. So maybe the Bucks are playing to their potential defensively. If that's the case, who knows? Either way, whether the Bucks or the Lions go to the NFC Championship game, that's going to be a huge story.
Yeah. I think if their defense plays like they did this week and they correct those drop passes, there were 5 drop passes by Tampa Bay in the first half of the game.
Yeah.
I mean,
And
it should have been 27-3 going into the half.
Yeah. And they're capable. Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Rashad White, Cade Otton. They've got weapons with that. Trey Palmer is a good rookie.
Mm-hmm.
They've got the weapons to throw up 30 plus on anybody. So that's their recipe, is to get into a shootout with Detroit and rely on Carlton Davis and Antoine Winfield Jr. and those elite linebackers to make some plays on Jared Goff.
Yeah, and I mean, moving forward, we saw that Tampa Bay defense. I mean, Jalen Hurts faced 13 quick pressures in this game. So it was the most quick pressures he'd faced in any game in his career. So if that defense keeps going like that, like we have seen Goff throw some gnarly picks.
Yeah.
If they can keep that pressure going, we're gonna see, your trademark Goff tagline flying around in the chats because Goff is known to make some mistakes under pressure. And if this Tampa Bay defense can show up like they did in this game, Goff is going to have a hard time.
You never know what it'll be, whether it's interceptions. Remember Thanksgiving against Green Bay, it was fumbles lost.
It was beautiful.
If you get
It was beautiful. That's what you meant to say. Yeah.
Huh?
I said, did you just mean to say it was beautiful?
Yeah, definitely.
That was a
beautiful.
great game for Packers fans.
I mean, Goff is ass. Let's go ahead and get it out there. I mean, and so I'm rooting for that Bucks defense. And I would love to see Tampa Bay go to an NFC Championship game. That would be huge for Baker Mayfield and the Bucks.
I mean, Tom Brady played for this team for a minute, and he was the first Buccaneers quarterback to have 300 plus passing yards and 3 plus passing touchdowns in any playoff game in the team's history.
Wow.
So, who would have thought, go back 5 years ago, who would have thought Baker Mayfield would be setting records for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers after what he went through in his first couple of years in the league?
Yeah.
What a turnaround.
And the same franchise that had the great Sean King.
Mm-hmm.
And Brad Johnson and Trent Dilfer.
Yeah. So I'm proud of the kid. I mean, so much competition there. I know they've, had a string.
It's a great accomplishment. He's playing great football right now. He really is. He's, like Jordan Love, like CJ Stroud, he's playing with a ton of confidence.
Yeah, and they're kind of peaking at the right time. I know historically that team hasn't had, the greatest competitors in it. They've had some strings of underperforming quarterbacks, but it's still an amazing accomplishment for him. And talk about a comeback. I mean, his career could have gone the Johnny Manziel way, where, he's talked about a lot going into the draft. And then, there's a lot of negativity about him, and then he just kind of falls to the wayside. But he willed that not to happen. And, I hope they continue that. I'm obviously not a Detroit fan. They got their one playoff win. That's enough. So I'm pulling for the Bucks in this next matchup. Detroit doesn't need to continue. If they do, I want Green Bay to also continue, because the NFC North matchup in the NFC Championship game would be that would be the most watched championship game, I think.
Yeah, that'd be crazy. It'd bring back Brett Favre and
I'll just have everybody in there. I mean,
Barry
Megatron,
Sanders
like,
vibes. Yeah.
the sidelines would be insane.
Um,
But go ahead.
so real quick, how are you feeling about the two teams that didn't play, the Ravens and the 49ers? That's our two favorites on paper to
Hmm.
win their conferences and meet in the Super Bowl. Based on what happened in Wild Card Weekend, wild is the key word. How do you think the divisional round goes down? I know you're going to pick your Packers to go into San Francisco, right? You picked against Green Bay on the podcast.
I did. I did. I
Um,
did turn my pick around before the game, about an hour and 20 minutes before. But so when I went 3 for 6 this week, and I was second guessing myself on these because the teams I wanted to win, I thought could win, but I I thought I was being too emotional with my picks. So, I only got half my picks right this week. Alex won the week for the first time. I think he only won one other week all season. So,
well, I told
Alex,
you it's playoff time.
it is playoff time, but I need to not second guess myself. Like I had a feeling about the Packers and about the Lions going into this matchup, and I should have switched my picks officially and done it before the podcast. So, I will still take the loss this week, but when I redid my picks before the Packers game, they were much better. So, that's kind of my bad. But, something I love here. So, Baker Mayfield now has as many postseason wins as Dak Prescott.
Wow.
And they're very rarely compared. And I know Dak has taken a lot of shit in his career, but they assume that the Cowboys are going to make the postseason most years. So, an interesting career turnaround for him. And some news out of Philly. Today, officially, Jason Kelsey announced he's retiring, which we knew he was toying with. If you watched his podcast with his brother, he was considering it for a while. But during the game, I even told you, I was like, what an awful way. He's obviously retiring. He looked so depressed during that game. I mean, 66 losses in his final 7 games on the Eagles after, making it to the Super Bowl so recently. I mean, I'm really bummed out for the guy because when you know you're retiring, you want to go out on top. You want to Ray Lewis it. Like announce that you're going to retire at the end of the season and then go and win the Super Bowl to end your career, you know?
Well, and it's interesting in football because you can be all in as a singular player. I think Jalen
Mhm.
Hurts was all in as a singular player and Jason Kelsey. But when the team around you is dysfunctional and not bought in and, you know, you can tell, you can almost see it coming, right? We're just playing bad football right now and you're doing your best, but the team around you isn't. And to have it come to an end like that, is going to be emotional, is going to be hard to deal with. And um, a hell of a career for Jason Kelsey, 13 years, all
Mhm.
in Philly, and one of the best centers in the game for his entire career. So
I
hell
I
of a
I feel
career.
like they're going to retire his jersey number.
Yeah,
They
you
absolutely
know,
should.
if you go back, remember when they won the Super Bowl with Nick Foles and they were wearing those dog masks
Yep.
as underdogs, and so he's been a part of some great history in Philly, and
And
nothing to
RIP to
hang
the
your head
tush
about.
push.
Yeah, yeah, and it was interesting to see the tush push get stopped in this game too.
Twice. It got stopped twice. It was beautiful.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I mean, the tush push, Jason was always in the middle of that. So it'll be
Mm-hmm.
interesting to see if they, find a way to continue that without him. But we'll see more of him. I think he's gonna end up, as an analyst on some network because he really understands the game and his commentary on the sport and his podcast that he does with his brother is so on point and so understandable. Like he
Yeah,
explains it so it's not annoying to people who know the sport but also understandable to people who don't. So I'm
yeah.
excited for him to, kind of take that next step in his career and, maybe take some time off and hang out with his daughters. They've got 3 little girls. I think the youngest is 8 months old right now. So, he gets to spend some time at home and then kind of kick off his analyst career, hopefully. Because I still want to see him on TV on Sundays, you know?
Yeah, he doesn't strike me as a guy that's going to disappear. I think we'll still see him on the podcast probably with his brother and in the the media at some point in
Mhm.
some aspects. So hell of a career and hell of a wild card first opening round of the playoffs. We love this time of year. It's the best time of year. We had some blowouts, but some shocking outcomes.
Yeah.
And I think the divisional round is going to be just as crazy. And I can't wait. And I can't wait to get some of these interviews. Like we said, we're going to have a big one tomorrow. We're going to have another one on Thursday. And we should have two the following week and all the way through the Super Bowl. So, Amanda, you're going to get a good chance to do a lot of these player interviews here. It's a great time of year.
Yeah, it's gonna be so fun. I'm stoked for these, and I'm stoked for you guys to tune in. So make sure you tune in. I think we're gonna drop that one tomorrow.
Yep,
And then, you know, our picks for this upcoming divisional round should come out on Friday as well. So tune in for that as well.
absolutely. So we appreciate the support as always. Don't forget to like, subscribe, leave a comment. Let us know what you think. And have a great week, guys. Peace out.